The future is actually here for AI, and that's the ability to deploy AI agents or agentic frameworks. And agentic frameworks, think about it, it's basically using AI to do anything a human could do to a point, right? We're not advocating for AI minus humans, we're advocating for AI to go faster or allow humans to go faster, be more accurate, be more efficient.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live recording of Financially Legal. We have a great topic today, AI and how AI is changing the profitability of law firms. My name is Emery Wager. I'm your host, co-founder of Confido Legal. Confido Legal is an embedded payment system specifically designed for the legal space. And today, I am incredibly excited to welcome Tim Sawyer and Patrick Maddigan to Financially Legal. These are two experts that are really pushing the boundaries of AI and law and really creating kind of that that future, that next generation of law, kind of in this new world of AI. So. Tim is a serial entrepreneur. He's founded multiple successful companies in digital marketing, health, and financial technology. He runs sales at Faster Outcomes, which is a platform that helps law firms use AI to power many of the typical kind of law firm workflows, particularly now in the plaintiff space. And then he's also, interestingly, been an advocate for kind of responsible use of technology. And written a lot about the relationship between humans and technology. So I'm sure we will touch on his perspectives there today. Patrick Maddigan, he is a third generation lawyer. So a lot of interesting dinner conversations, I'm sure there. He's an executive at Eastern Bank, still affiliated with them, correct?
Yeah.
And held many positions in law, both at firms and in-house positions. And interestingly, you've held positions kind of both on the business side and also in formal legal positions. So interesting, take on kind of coming at this from both the business side and the legal side, and then also co-founder of Faster Outcomes. So Patrick, Tim, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. Really
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Emery. Thank you very much. It's a great platform. Great.
Okay, so you have founded your executives at a company that is basically enabling this AI future for law. So you're coming at this from a certain perspective, let's say. I won't use the word bias, but you're coming at this from a certain perspective. I want to start by really leaning into that perspective.
Okay.
Give us the rosy picture of AI in legal for the next 5 years. What does the next 5 years look like if you can just be, as optimistic as possible? What does that look like?
So if it's okay, Patrick,
Yep.
Take a.
Of course.
So again, grateful to be here. So my take on it, yes, and I'm very comfortable using the term biased. And the reason I say I'm comfortable with that is because I am a user myself. So long before Faster Outcomes, I was using AI for a lot of my business life, right? There are a lot of applications and use cases that folks aren't aware of. So I was a proponent long before Faster Outcomes and the application to the legal space. That being said, since joining Faster Outcomes and just meeting hundreds of attorneys and all different types of business models, and that's what I hope we can talk about today, Emery, is three models, right? You've got a billable hour law firm, you've got rise in popularity of subscription-based legal services, so you pay monthly versus a big retainer, and then you've got contingency law, and each one of those has a very different profit model. Right. So, and I want to speak to that, but I had the benefit this past weekend of being at the ABA mid-year conference, wonderful conference, great. And I attended a speech, a talk by a CEO who they're starting to, I won't mention the name, but they're wading into technology, wading into AI a little bit. And the discussion started with, if you think about the evolution of AI, we've been using AI for a long time, right? So whether it's AI in email, so existing workflows that we have, to more complex solutions like creating a demand letter, to now using AI agents. And so the future is actually here for AI, and that's the ability to deploy AI agents or agentic frameworks. And agentic frameworks, think about it, it's basically using AI to do anything a human could do to a point, right? We're not advocating for AI minus humans. We're advocating for AI to go faster or allow humans to go faster, be more accurate, be more efficient. And the irony of this talk, as he was explaining the evolution, was, and outside the hotel, there were 12 cars parked that were all self-driving. So you don't need to look much further than that to think about the future of AI and legal. And so anytime I get into a debate with my colleagues about AI's ability to prepare or respond to the written word, I said, well, I just saw you get out of that car. You look like you're doing pretty good. You just navigated the city of Phoenix. You didn't smash into anything, right? The driver didn't bail on you. And so that's kind of it, right? So anything a human can do that you can imagine, we can do most things with again, not advocating for minus human, but with human in the middle. And so I'm really looking forward to unpacking that. But that's kind of the state that we're at right now. So Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, we couldn't be much more aligned. I think even 5 years, Emery, is like, it's like asking where is technologies a few years ago going to be in 20, right? Because the pace of this is unreal.
It is
incredible. As someone who's been using this for a while, a lot of us are using this without knowing, right? I mean, we'll go back to autocomplete or, certain algorithms that Google's serving us. There are tons of AI uses in the real world that we don't think of because right now we're kind of locked on the open AI, ChatGPT type of interface that we're all thinking about. But the uses for it are everywhere. To Tim's point, it's going to be invading every part of our life, from the cars that get us to places, to the way that we do work, to the way that we run our families and our complicated lives in terms of scheduling and automating so much of it. So the 5 years is really tough. To Tim's point, the 1 or 2 year view is the deployment of these AI agents, right? And these are essentially artificial intelligence that is trained to a college degree, master's degree, doctorate, legal degree level of knowledge, and have the ability to go do specific tasks and be highly trained and informed on those tasks. And so for something that, as an attorney with a relatively small firm, something that, my few staff members and I can do, if I can add this technology and essentially 5x, 10x my workforce, the efficiency is going to come naturally along with it. So it's a very exciting time. And to Tim's point, the crux of the change right now is AI as we know it, or we think we know it, and changing is this agentic framework that is being built in a lot of these products and a lot of the software that we've got out there.
100%.
Well, yeah, it's very exciting. Patrick, maybe you can talk a little bit about sort of just level set on some of the practice areas that you've worked in law. And then, as a lawyer, I think your journey to found faster outcomes would be, I think, really interesting to our listeners who, are mostly legal professionals.
Sure. And I'm excited to have come into faster outcomes at an early time, but I do want to caveat that this is the brainchild of our CEO, Rishi Bhatia, and he should get full founder credit. I will take early adopter, early player here very happily, though. So, I do have an interesting background, that being that not only did I have a grandfather and father who were practicing attorneys and practiced together, and I essentially grew up in that law firm. When there are days off or half days or sick days, I was running around as a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, terrorizing that office, playing with their technologies then, which meant maybe trying to send a fax. I don't even think they had that in the early days, using a check stamping machine that they used to write checks. It was the old days. And
I think the check stamping machine might still exist.
It might, but it was like you turn the handle and you had to adjust these little levers and you ka-chunk, and you would do the next one and ka-chunk. So a lot of fun for a 5 or 6 year old kid, not necessarily the best way to do business. And so I've gotten to see, and by the way, adamantly that I would never be an attorney as a high school student, adamant about it. It's funny what changes 10, 20 years down the line. So The long story is I watched handwritten yellow legal pads, accordion files. Countless file cabinets. That was my job in Summers as a real young man. Just alphabetizing and organizing files as like a 10, 11-year-old to make some money. To watch that go from the birth of fax machines and how crucial that was to the law practice for a while, to email and how none of us could practice without it for the most part, and now to seeing AI. So it's been a really fascinating and probably beyond what a lot of people have seen because of that family dynamic. It's been incredible to see, and the pace of these changes has gone from kind of incremental to just flying, and AI is probably the best representative of that. I think watching the maturity of the industry and then watching the use cases that we found. I'm a generalist by nature. I always have kind of done a lot of things: family practice, estate and estate planning, wills and estates, trusts. I manage a number of nonprofit foundations. I've been in-house at nonprofits. I've worked at for-profit corporations as a legal counsel. So I've done, and I have my own practice. I've always had my own practice to be able to do some of that on the side, which is mostly legal work and consulting. So I do have a pretty diverse background, and I see the applications of AI in every single one of those, and in many of the areas that I don't work. AI does, to Tim's point, right? AI can do what a human does, if not better, faster. That's for sure. And with some human oversight, I'd make a pretty solid argument that there's data out there that shows that AI has a lower error rate than your standard human attorney. Yeah. Right. So that gap isn't changing. We may be improving as humans thanks to some of these tools, and the error rate of attorneys with education and specialization may go down. But I can tell you that AI error rate is not getting higher. It is certainly getting better. And so I don't think that gap is changing. And that's really what we're seeing, is that the firms and attorneys that embrace AI are separating themselves and getting a competitive advantage. And it doesn't matter what your practice area is. If there's a template involved, the AI can do it. If there's data processing, organizing, reading, structuring that data, AI can do it just as well as we can. And then we review it and we engage with it. And we use that as a tool to be more profitable to the point of our conversation, but also maybe to invest in new practice areas, to bring along first and second year associates at a more rapid rate and turn their work product into something that is much more usable rather than some of the kind of the grunt work that we had to do when we first come out of law school. So it touches every area. It's beginning to come into the courts. It's coming into court filings. It's coming into the way courts evaluate cases. There's ways that we use that to evaluate our cases, and is this worth our time? There's ways that solo or nonprofit agencies can use this as an access to justice tool, because those are traditionally obviously very understaffed and underpaid, and lack of resources there, where this can maybe solve that and close that gap. So, as a quick summation of all of that, it's applicable to every area of the law. It can drive profitability and efficiency in many different ways. And it's all either here or it's coming here very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Cool. But this is financially legal, so it's time to nerd out a little bit on the finances. Let's think about kind of a law firm P&L, and we'll go into kind of the costs, the cost items there. So you've got, expenses. So you've got, your kind of like overhead operating costs, and then your kind of your cost of revenue, your, attorneys who are actually doing the work. I'm curious what you're seeing and what you expect to see in the future. Does overhead come down? Does, the cost of revenue come down? Or maybe does everything just become an operating cost and there's sort of no, kind of like per unit cost, because everything is sort of operating in this sort of like AI machine world here that's maybe being overseen by attorneys, but they're not like, billing out kind of hours. I could see it kind of going a bunch of different ways. So like, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of how you're seeing kind of the P&L change and the expenses, and like, and how you expect it to change in the future.
Tim, your business acumen experience is very impressive and beyond mine. So why don't you speak to that? But I'd love to jump in on the legal, what I'm seeing in the legal field on the back end of that, and just kind of explore some of that.
100%. So great question, Emery. So again, the way I look at this is there's two sides of the P&L, right? You've got your cost structure, then you also have revenue. Okay. And so as the modern law firm looks at integrating AI into their workflows, what we're discovering is you can't. So let's say contingency, right? You're working on contingency, and AI would be a no-brainer because you can more efficiently, simple as create a demand, you can organize a file, create a case line, executive summaries, so many things that you can do very quickly. And I did a little research before popping on, because think about this for a second. We're working on a case right now for a client that there's a medical chronology that is over 100,000 pages, right? So let's say you have a crane falls on an apartment building, you've got multiple plaintiffs and they end up, right? You could get in the hundreds, 200,000 pages of medical chronology. So I did a little research and on what it would cost by the time you organize it, analyze it, right? And now you could do way more. But the point is, a huge medcron could cost you as much as $3, $4, up to $500,000, right? With even human in the middle using AI, let's say you could get that cost down to $20,000, $10,000, right? So if you had 3 partners in a firm and they were going to spend $400,000, now they spend 50. That's $350,000 that drops to the bottom line, not taxable because it's not revenue, right? Right to the bottom line. 3 guys just split $100,000. Simple use case, right? Now, is that a big medcron to tackle? Certainly. But if you think about, again, from the expense side, even the cost of that can then be externalized to the client, right? So in addition to the 33%, because they've used this platform and they can show that it was used specifically for this case, they can externalize that cost, bringing it almost down to zero. So that's just one simple use case that could change the P&L. But if you think about the tasks that we perform, right? So for example, in a billable hour use case, right? So you've got a law firm that bills by the hour. There are a lot of things that they do that aren't billed by the hour, right? Including efficiencies lost by not doing a great job paying attention of what is billable and what is not. But in terms of intake, for example, the initial intake, that's not a billable process. So, but it takes time. So if you think of the use case of someone writing in a stylus on an iPad, converting that into a long email, sending that to a law assistant who then sends it out for a little research, and then an engagement letter is sent. Imagine if you take all that 6-hour process and turn it down and boil it down to 10 minutes. That's a lot of time. And if you do that 3 times a week, times 4.33 times a month, that's a lot of time, right? So there's efficiencies that can be taken from each case, right? Whether it's subscription, billable, or contingency. But then there's marketing, right? And so one of the other cases that we're working on, and it's really important. So I did a little research on what it costs. Think about this. Law is an aging population. We know this, right? 65% of lawyers are over the age of 40. So one of the big issues that lawyers have now, Emery, is succession planning, right? So if you've got a lawyer who's got a body of work that spans 4 decades, I looked at some statistics. When a lawyer who's been in business that long retires, it's not unusual to lose up to 50% of his clientele to younger, cheaper, whatever it is, right? So you got a 50% loss. If you've got that guy's generating or gal's generating $3 million, that's a $1.5 million hit when that person goes away. Imagine if you can allow them to not go away by using AI to take their entire body of work, every case they've worked on, every speech they gave, every podcast, every email they sent, and create all their research and create a living, breathing AI instance where you can actually chat with that, and you could get a de minimis effect on loss of retention, plus the education for the next generation. So what's the dollars around that? So while there's finish with this kind of summary, is there are small wins that you can get just improving email communication. The amount of time it takes to respond to email. You can automate that. You can look at what comes in based on what they've said before, automate what goes out. Times. So there's all those time savings, but then there's the other part of it, which you can use that body of work to create marketable assets. And then the last piece is the ability to go in new markets, Emery, right? So historically, everyone's got to be an expert before they can go out and say, and we don't use the word expert, I learned that term, thank you, Maddigan. Everyone's got to be really good at what they do. and then they can go out and get clients in that space. With AI, though, the learning curve shrinks quickly because you can become a matter expert, if not an expert in general, very quickly, which would allow you to pivot your law firm into more profitable, higher end, high value clients. So there's two sides of the takeaway is there's two sides. There's cost cutting and efficiency, right? Effectiveness. And then there's the ability to generate more revenue. And AI accomplishes huge impacts on the bottom line.
Yeah.
As it relates. And the bigger the firm, you get does that make sense, Emery?
Yeah. No, so it sounds like, at least on the cost side, you're basically eliminating overhead, but you're also eliminating kind of your cost of revenue too. And just
acquisition cost goes way down,
generating a significantly higher profit. How does that change the client, like what the client's paying? I mean, do you see a future where someone comes in with a 10% contingency fee and just kind of cleans house, kind of like the Costco of injury law, or flat fees, complex litigation, and charges a tenth of what another.
Yeah. I'll let Pat speak to that. I think, but I just want to say this because we're hearing this now. 2 years ago, a client would go to the lawyer and say, "Hey, you're not using AI, are you?" And he, "Oh." And, although of course many were in limited capacity, that has changed. Our clients now, they're dealing with their clients who are more sophisticated, saying, "You use AI, right?" Because they know, right? You're not if you've got a sophisticated corporation, they want their law firm to pursue the same efficiencies that they're pursuing themselves. So if they're aware that AI can create this document that you just charged me $12,000 for, so there'll be a hybrid. There's going to be a hybrid model. I don't think you're ever going to go to super cheap legal, although who knows? I'm not Nostradamus, but I think a hybrid model is more likely. What do you think, Patrick?
So great points. So I'm coming at this from a guy who has been a in-house operations for law firms, an attorney, obviously, and also a business development guy in the law firm space. And I think all of those are impacted by this type of stuff. The rise of flat fee billing in law, and we talk about this a lot. It's something like over a third over the past just handful of years, right? But that's because clients are demanding it. Clients are demanding clearer billing. Clients are demanding more efficient work. And clients are demanding faster and stronger outcomes, which is hence the name of the organization. That's what they want, and that's what they're asking for, and they're going to find the attorney who gives that. I don't know that they're going to look for the lowest. I don't know they're going to look for Costco, but they are going to look for a name that they trust, that they know that they can go, that will give them a flat rate, that will give them a hybrid billing. So X is flat, Y is hourly, and that gives them the certainty that they're looking for. And we talk about this a lot about, we have customers at Faster Outcomes, but our customers have clients, right? And we need to put the client in the center. So if we can improve the client experience, the customer is happier and we're more successful. And that client experience, they want more surety in their billing. I want to understand. I don't want to say, here's my case, or here's the work I need you to do. You tell me, I think this is 10 hours and it's 30, and I have no control over that. Hopefully there's a check-in that goes along the way as that happens. But I wouldn't be the first customer or client rather to get a bill that I didn't expect, or that's a lot higher, right? And so that's what the client wants. They want you to be efficient. They want their costs to go down, and they want the best possible outcome for their cases, right? And so AI is impacting that, and AI is driving that. And that's, to Tim's earlier point, that's what's going to drive more revenue for you, right? And sometimes that flat rate might be an overestimation. Sometimes it's going to be an underestimation. But if you get it consistent and the client responds to it and your client base responds to it, you've got more work and you're able to do more work in less time. It's worth mentioning, I think, how maligned the lawyer is with the work that they do, not necessarily public perception, but it has one of the highest rates of suicide, alcohol abuse, and drug abuse, period. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of that is the pressure and the workload that we put upon ourselves. And if AI can lighten that load, I mentioned access to justice, which is a huge kind of public good, but you can also probably improve the profession as a whole, allow the people who are doing good work, but just are really struggling under the pressures of the workload, to be more efficient and to allow themselves to have a better work-life balance, or to go out and start the new vertical. That is what they've always wanted to get into in law anyway, but the economics or the job market dictated that they do the other one. There's a lot of gains that can be had there that we see kind of a social good aspect. And then one of the things that we do at Faster Outcomes is we think about that a lot, as I mentioned, but we also are kind of putting our money where our mouth is when we're donating part of the equity, part of our profits, and part of our time back to societal good for AI in general. And we're working on what that looks like, and there's going to be more details to come down the line. But that's the idea, is that this is going to improve the delivery of legal services for the lawyer, for the customer, the client, and hopefully for the industry as a whole.
Well said.
Super interesting. So, kind of setting the contingency world aside, obviously the percentage of the population who can access the civil, justice system is quite small. And maybe just kind of thinking about what you both just said, maybe we don't see costs necessarily come down, too much kind of in that band where, the client can already afford the system, but that band overall comes down, that box gets bigger, and a bigger percentage of folks can access it because there will be more options kind of at the lower end of that sort of accessibility box with AI.
Yeah, 100% Emery, and our CEO Rishi Bhatia talks about that a lot, right? He's got his own experiences, and if you think about even in family law, right? So judges, and they're amazing people, they have a lot of work to do, right? I think if we're all honest with each other, there's only so much time they have to process information, and then they've got to make a decision that has a huge impact on somebody's life. And they're amazing people doing the best they can with the resources they have. We know that, right? But imagine, and maybe they've got a few minutes to review a file, and then they've got to make a big decision. Part of that's gut, part of that's, instinct, whatever. What we could do with those processes and provide more effective and efficient gathering of information so that people can make more informed decisions, those has significant impact on people's lives, right? So when you're talking about, can you squeeze some costs out of it? Absolutely, you can squeeze tons of costs out of the system. You can put more revenue in the system, but you can also make the system more efficient for everybody, right? And when you talk to people who have gone through the legal system, even those with resources, by the way, not just those, to your point, without resources, people with resources will say, it doesn't make any sense. What should take a minute takes a week. What should take a week takes 6 months. What should take 6 months takes 3 years. And we're backed up, right? And so AI can create a lot of efficiency in that system and give more people access to justice, access to legal services. That is a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish with Faster Outcomes, with our human in the middle commitment and human-centric commitment. So I'm excited about that, right? And I was talking with some judges in Maine last weekend, and they're like, Tim, we've got trust issues, right? Because they'd almost rather trust their 5 minutes of analysis than, a quick summary from AI. So there's still trust and education that needs to be built in that.
I can imagine, there's been so many issues. Well, there hasn't been so many. There's been a lot of highly publicized issues with lawyers citing, cases that didn't exist. I can imagine a judge, making a mistake like that would be, 100 times more. It would be in the news.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of ways to unpack that too, because the use of AI can create bias, because AI knows what we've taught it, right? And so if a judge is using that to evaluate potentially the rate of recidivism, right? Is this felon defendant going to commit another crime? Are they going to come back into the system? And the reality is there's a lot do. But how are we? What factors are we putting in there, and what is the AI learning from that could create that bias, right? And then to your point, there's definitely been some highly publicized incidents, all of which have one common factor: there was no human in the middle. Trust but verify. Tim, how often do we say that?
100%.
Trust but verify. And again, hallucination rates plummeting. Technology gets better, fewer and fewer of those. But someone's still got to look at that and use the HI, the human intelligence side of this. to make sure that the AI is doing the right things and is the right focus. And there'll be granular levels of that, and there'll be really high-end examinations of that, certainly in law. It's always a balance. In law, you want to take a moment. You want to think things out. You want to make sure your response is perfect. You want to make sure that you haven't missed anything. The concept of going fast is a hard juxtaposition for an attorney. I struggle with it every day at Faster Outcomes, which couldn't be going any faster. I don't think. I'm sure Tim and others might feel differently. But the marriage of those two is a challenge. And the only way that I can keep up with the business side of what we're doing is to use AI tools every day. There's no way that I could, because I would sit back and I would analyze and I would think. And if you give me the time, and if you put me in the 5-minute, then it's exactly what Tim just described. I'm going with my gut and my knowledge and my education and my experience, but I don't have the time. I mean, those legal shows are so entertaining, right? There's a reason why it's a constant on our TV. If you picture that prosecutor carrying or defense attorney carrying a giant caseload and not knowing until the moment their case is called in front of the judge, sir, this is, that's that 5 minutes that you could gain from AI analyzing those documents and giving you a summary and a timeline, pretty powerful. And it's better for everybody. It's better.
And I think it'll make things hopefully more fair.
Yeah.
And now what's interesting, Emery, is I was talking to a couple of attorneys that, again, we were in this main conference, and it was kind of an open discussion. Everybody in the room was talking about some of the use cases that they have, how they use open AI versus what we're doing, which is very, very different. And open AI has some great benefits, but when it comes to the law, caution. We have to have caution, right? So, but it was interesting. So this guy was a trial attorney, and he was talking about how he uses AI to poke holes in his arguments. So he'll put his argument in and say, what am I missing? What did I do wrong? How can I improve? And any information he has, to the extent from opposing counsel, he's saying, how can I exploit? Right? So attorneys are getting creative. There's no doubt about it. But even think, from that, and then we'll get back to the finances. But I was talking to this one lawyer, and he just said, yeah, imagine if I could know I'm going into court. This is the judge. This is how he or she has ruled on the last 300 cases by time of day, personalities involved, the demographics of the human, and what my chance is of winning, losing, and what I'm going to get, and hit submit. And you have this predictability factor, right? Which is good, because now he can be better, or she can be better prepared. But then again, can't approach unbiased, because if you see the same decision 50 times in a row, the likelihood then that you're going to get anything different. Mm-hmm. But the reality is you're probably not going to get anything different anyways. So there's so much that I think we're at the very early stages. To Patrick's point, we've been using AI for a long time, right? Now we're figuring out how to dial in and really, and the attorneys are a smart group, right? They know the things that can be made more efficient. I'm kind of at the place now where, outside of someone trying a case, there's a role for AI. May not be to conclusion, like I said, human at the end, review, and human in the middle. But there's not a lot that you couldn't do with professional AI platforms, and they're secure, right? Because security is a big issue too. So we can protect all that stuff, and they can use AI just like better than open source AI. But the societal benefits, the cost benefits, again, call me biased, but I don't see where, I shouldn't say I don't see, I can see where you could say there's some misdeeds, but that's fraud, right? And there's always going to be a tiny percentage of folks who don't do the right thing. And AIs, we have that now, right? AIs probably had to do a better job of sniffing that out, to be honest. And so it seems like mostly good. I'm sure there'll be arguments to the other side. It's funny, because I was talking to a CEO of a large law firm 2 days ago, and I said, do you ever see she's a business person at first. I said, do you ever see a place where you advertise your hybrid legal model that you use AI? And she said, as a contrarian, not today, but absolutely, I'm going to lean into that.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think that's how, again, I want to get back to finance as well, but so right now, big discussion of AI is in the schools, right? Remember when I use Google for my research and I might get in trouble for that? Or what if I use AI to write it? So there's a lot of things happening in education with that. But the reality is we're teaching kids to use Google. In law schools, we're teaching kids to use LexisNexis and Westlaw and other sites like that do research. We're now going to use AI to do those things. And those students need to learn how to use AI. And so while you may not be able to get away with writing the paper entirely through that AI system, but if you're not using it, your paper's not going to be an A. And that's what law firms are going through right now, right? Like, I can't be regarded as a great attorney unless my work product is among the greats. And I might not be able to get there without the help of AI. It's been the secret. I don't want the teacher to know that I used AI for this. I don't want, no, we'll get to a point where you not only want to tell them, and you should tell your clients, and that's an informed consent and ethical concern, but if you're not using it, you're not producing the work product that you need. So you do want to tout exactly that. I'm experienced with the most cutting edge technologies and legal software solutions that are out there, and I use them to deliver faster and better outcomes. Like, we're going to lean into that. The industry is just starting to do that, where it's not this like little scarlet letter of shame. Yeah. It's a moment of pride.
Pride. I agree.
Yeah. The school thing is so interesting. If you played around with Google's, it's not really new anymore, but the Notebook LM, I was messing around with it with my 5-year-old and just thinking about, we were, listening to the podcast that we created, off of some material.
Yeah.
With these AI voices sounding like real people, and thinking about what her experience is going to be in, middle school, high school, and college. Yeah. I hope academia really leans into it. And just to go back to teaching typing.
There's one law school that recently released that they are training their first-year law students on AI uses in the legal practice. So that's happening right now, and it will continue to. There will be the second, the third. They'll keep coming, and they're going to be producing attorneys who are doing high-level work super efficiently, and will be in demand at law firms from big to small, because it's a skill set that you're going to need. And to Tim's point, it's succession planning. But it's also kind of alleviating the need to hire 4 associates when maybe 3 with AI can get it done. Or the work product is that you hire the same amount, but attorneys who use AI well are going to replace attorneys who can't use AI. And that's just the reality of the way the technology is going.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. Revenue, to some degree, for those of us who have, run businesses before, is always it's a little bit of a vanity metric, right? But that's how we determine the AmLaw 100, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Tim, you brought up some opportunities to use AI to increase revenue. That's definitely a possibility. But do you see, to both of you, do you see sort of a refocus on profitability over revenue with these tools, or how do you think about that kind of future?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because a big question that comes up, obviously, when you're talking about implementing professional grade AI tools is cannibalism and billable hours, right? So not every lawyer wants less. We talked about this, wants less billable hours. In fact, they want the diametric opposite. They want more billable hours, right? And so there's that tension on the neck that's not going to go away. But there's a lot of back office, like we said, that can be more efficient. And do I think? Well, I think, although there's no study that I could point to right now, I think just as a person, a thinking person, you would say, okay, there is some cloak around how law firms bill and how they get to the number of hours they get to. And, that's like, it's not nefarious. It's just not the most transparent process in the world. And as consumers and corporations become more proficient with their use of AI themselves, and they understand the cost, what they can benefit from deploying these, they're going to start, like I said, to demand, hey, so it's going to become more competitive. Mm-hmm. I just don't see any world where a law firm says, well, the best part about us is we have no AI in our firm, and we're the least efficient organization you're ever going to work with. Want to do that? Right?
But a great product that will just charge you for our time for. And it just doesn't make sense in the new world right now.
It doesn't. And so I think, anything if you look at anything that once it becomes, there's a level of automation that is unavoidable, that is going to happen. I hope that doesn't make me unpopular with your listeners, but you can kind of look out and say 3 to 5 years from now, it's not going away, right? And if you look at in recent history, and as a guy who's been involved in digital marketing and software for a long time, the biggest disruption I saw prior to this was the internet, right? I had a digital marketing company at the time for local insurance agents, and it disrupted markets like crazy. And the perfect example is you have the larger carriers at the time who wanted to, how were they were using huge ad dollars and they were going to the internet, right? So for the first time ever, you could interact about your homeowner's insurance on the internet. And in Massachusetts, for example, you had a rate system that's non-competitive. So you just have, this is your credit score, this is your driving record, so you can't shop from agent to agent. Well, Geico started to, or any firm, started putting tons of money into deregulating those markets. And then once they got deregulated, they came in and used the internet to blow up the local independent insurance system. So smart agents got ahead of that, started investing in the internet, got really good at using social media channels, and they adapted. The ones who didn't got killed, right? And then you had cloud-based computing. That was the next big disruptor. And from my point of view, if you added cloud and the internet 50 times over, you couldn't get to the level of disruption that we're about to experience. We're at the very tip of it. Mm-hmm. So law firms are going to need to get more efficient. They're going to need to get more transparent. The good news is, so does every other industry in the world. Over time, as people get more educated, things become more transparent. And with transparency comes reduction. And so it's not a bad thing, right? The best lawyers are still going to be the best lawyers. They're still going to be able to command the highest prices. But it does create opportunity for, if you had one lawyer across the street from the other and they were both around the same, one was efficient with AI and the other one was, I'm not doing that. I'm putting my money on the AI guy. Go get it. That's just, and be more comfortable giving that person my legal work.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, coming back to the financials a little bit, do you think today, or if not today, when in the future will someone be able to kind of, someone with a little savvy be able to look at the financial statements for a kind of AI powered law firm versus a non kind of AI powered law firm, define that how you will, and say, okay, this is obviously the one versus the other one.
So politics aside, if you look at truly politics aside, but if you look at what's going on, so you have these huge law firms, right? And they have all these costs baked in forever. Someone's on top of that to some extent, right? Now you have this Doge committee, right? Elon Musk leading this Doge committee, and they're going through this huge, Neanderthal payment system that, again, whatever side of the aisle you're on, they're going to go through that. Right? Now, imagine if you had in a law firm, you had an overlay of an intelligent agent who can go through those costs, not only analyze, hey, like the commercials, these 3 subscriptions, we don't need these anymore, right? Not only be able to pick out costs, but to be able to do a comparative analysis and say, hey, these 12 vendors, I found that we can get all this stuff, comparable service levels at 1/10 of the cost. And anyone who doesn't think that's not coming, and probably note to self, we should be the ones to create that. Because it would just be training an agent on, there's a limited number of vendors that a typical law firm has, right? Mm-hmm. So you train the agent on what those vendors are, create a matrix. This is who's the best and charges the least. And you put it into the system. In what world would that not end up driving costs down?
Yeah. So there's I want to unpack one thing here. Politics aside, my issue is not necessarily that if someone who's bright enough to create some of the most profitable companies in the world and send people to Mars and rockets is doing that work. I think it's great. And I think it's great that you're using AI with it. My concern is the same that most attorneys have: data. data privacy, confident. How is this okay that my stuff is in someone else's hands who's not the government? Whether I should trust the government or not, totally different conversation. But that's the worry, right? That's the red
Well,
flag.
it's a good analogy though for the industry, right?
Yeah.
Their main concern is access to that information.
Yeah. And so, like, when you're building a company like this, when you have a vision to build a company like this, like our founding team, our CEO and our CTO, that's got to be the crux of the issue. I talked about client-centric thinking, right? Like, client cares, the attorney cares because they've got ethical obligations. We need to care. And so, you've got to use the top technologies to protect data, to encrypt data, and you need people behind the wheel internally who are aware of those ethical obligations. Those ethical obligations mean a lot to them. Tim will tell you this is one of those things that I talk about a lot, and to make sure that our platform and any platform is delivering that. And that's part of what the attorneys have to do. They have to vet this stuff. And if you're not vetting it, or you don't have someone on your staff vetting it, you're letting your client down, ethically speaking. So you don't have to use it. I believe what Tim believes, and I think, Emery, we've hit on this, like, you're going to have to, or you're not going to be there. You're going to be the insurance company of old. When the partner retires who brought in all the business and all the knowledge, you're done. But you need to know enough about this stuff so that you can make these decisions. And if you don't, then I really would question, like, how are you living up to your level of the competency of practice, right? Your level of delivery of legal services. It's got to be competent. And if you don't understand the technology enough to say yes or no, enough to say A or B, or A and B are both okay, then you need to reevaluate the way you're looking at that, because this is where, and again, I want to get back to the finances, but it's really interesting to look at the ethical overlay of all this stuff too.
No, 100%. And yeah, that's a tough question. We could probably do a whole nother episode. So mark your calendars for the ethics of AI coming up next month.
Patrick and I love this stuff. So
I'm on it.
We learn every day from our clients, and we're blessed and fortunate because we're always talking to lawyers outside our own firm, right, about what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish. So our learning curve gets shorter by the minute, right? And then we want to be able to share these use cases, while respecting the privacy of our clients, in the hopes that folks can put two and two together. To Patrick's point, like, if you do it responsibly and you do it with, people have to remember, as ChatGPT is great, Claude is great, it's open source AI, super, super helpful. But even in secret mode, or whatever they call it now, where they charge you a couple $100 per month, which is not nothing, by the way, they're still stamping that data, right? ChatGPT is still keeping that data. It's not, they're saying they're not going to show it to the world, but now it's not just you and your client, it's you and your client and ChatGPT. And just by virtue of that, you've got to be careful, right? So
you're in a minefield. You're in a minefield of confidentiality and attorney-client privilege.
You are really, really, really pushing the envelope, right? And it's funny because Patrick knows I travel to shows, and you hear a very responsible attorney say, well, this is what I did, and he or she unknowingly has walked into a minefield, right? And I think as time goes on, you're going to see more and more ethical guidelines come out. I think we're still in a very ambiguous phase of this, where the bar associations are kind of somewhat reluctant. And it's interesting too, because real quick, the American Bar Association is doing their own study now. So I spoke with a lobbyist in Phoenix, and just a cursory conversation I had with this guy about the state of AI, he was like, wow. So he's working with Congress. They're trying to catch up to provide guidance. He's like, Tim, if you went and had this conversation in front of these committees, they would literally have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, whoa. So we got to catch up. Regulatory's got to, and that's how it always is, though. Emery, right? Is this the state of industry outpaces the ability to regulate it. And so you have this little bumpy period, right? We're going through that little bumpy period right now. But all markets become efficient eventually. And this market will become more efficient across the board, no doubt.
So let's quickly talk about other ways to make money with AI that doesn't necessarily run afoul of these ethical things, right? So part of the role that I've had as law firms is bringing in clients. And part of what we build at Faster Outcomes is the ability to do that using some digital marketing techniques, right? So like, we can create content infrastructure architect where I can say, hey, I hate doing social media posts. I just don't like doing them.
Yeah.
Can you write me like 8 of these that are based in this and that maybe leverage, again, my existing correspondence, my existing papers I've written, memos I've written, whatever it may be. Can you give me the next 6 LinkedIn posts next week? Can I have a blog now as an attorney? I never would have. Can I write a book?
Yeah.
All of these things are right. Like it's all right there. That's outside of cost-effective litigation strategies, outside of, whatever it may be, risk management, compliance. Now I'm looking at AI-assisted legal marketing, AI-assisted legal. I mean, I could write a paper, and to your point, Emery, have a podcast created out of it with other voices speaking that aren't even my own. The client intake is great, but just the lead generation side of it is big. And that's where business is now. And business at the AM Law 100 level, business is baked into law firms. But at your small to mid-sized firm, it's 1 or 2 people doing both. All right. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a dedicated marketer if you're a large personal injury firm or something like that. But these tools, even playing fields, allow you to balance both roles, which are not easy for attorneys to begin with. There's not a lot who do lead generation and legal work really well. And there's not enough time in the day to do it. So what if we can, let's automate that. And now let's talk about profitability. I'm opening up verticals in different practice areas. Yeah. I'm putting out inbound marketing, social digital marketing. I'm speaking on circuits. All of that is at your fingertips now and is only going to get better in the future. So there's revenue. Revenue might stick around because we're going to show that growing, and then we show how our costs are shrinking as well.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Well said.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up with a dumb but potentially entertaining question. Sam Altman, founder OpenAI, made an incredibly self-serving bet about when the first one-person billion-dollar company was going to exist. And so I thought it would be potentially entertaining to put that question to you. When do we see the first solo attorney in the AmLaw 100 here?
So someone who could become super proficient, but they would have to deploy exactly what Patrick just talked about. They would have to be really good at expanding markets and using AI effectively. Because the thing about this, it's counterintuitive. If a lawyer is really good at lawyering, very quickly they become, but not a business person, very quickly they become the limiting step because they're swapping dollars for hours. So if they don't consider the business side of growth, I just did an interview on this the other day, then they'll never get to $1 billion. But if they use AI for both sides, right, the law and for business marketing, could they get to $1 billion? I don't know. Do I think me and Patrick could get to as 2? Definitely. I'm glad you brought that up, Emery. He and I are going to do that now. I appreciate the challenge. I was going to go polar plunge swimming this weekend, but I have a new challenge. Patrick and I are going to create $1 billion company this weekend.
Yeah, I think you'll have to move to Arizona or one of those states that's.
I got to play both sides, offense and defense, to win games. Patrick knows that.
That's very true. Emery, good point about Arizona. There's some other flexibility where you can have non-attorney owners of law firms, which is an interesting wrinkle, right? But here's the way I could see this happening. It's awesome question, by the way. Like this is nerd geek stuff that we're all enjoying, and I'm super impressed with obviously Sam Altman and others who've done this stuff. There's a model out there where you're not necessarily lawyering, you're advertising, you are an attorney. But what you basically got behind you is a call center. And you are referring those cases out, or you're pairing yourself with another firm in order to make that case happen. Usually mass plaintiffs, class action, stuff like that, right? I don't need a call center anymore. So that's gone. I don't need paralegals much anymore because they weren't doing anything in that particular model anyway, short of vetting. I've now got a tool that takes intake, vets the plaintiff, vets the case, that's the value or establishes a value, and helps me choose the best of my business partners, my law firm partners, meaning other firms that I might be partnering with and referring to. And that's a whole, I'll get into that in a sec, but that will evaluate and give me the answer. I'll hand that off. I'll stay involved. I'll talk to the plaintiff, probably through AI-powered correspondence. some of these tools that we've got, I could easily be a multi-$100 million solo.
Think about it. If you were a mass tort aggregator, you could absolutely do that. I just learned something, Patrick. I'm very
There you
grateful.
go.
Thank you, Emery. Make it 6 so we can continue to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. In the short term, I think that's the model that gets you there. There's one quick wrinkle in the legal industry is I can pay people who send me a referral, and I can get paid by people I send referrals.
Yeah.
Only if I'm attorney to attorney, right? And so that with AI behind it has the ability to, I may never try a case, but I may make a lot of money helping more cases get to court or get to resolution.
Super interesting.
Amen. Thank you, Emery, by the way. I appreciate you. Super grateful to be here today. And good luck
so
with Fido and all that.
Absolutely. No, it's been great. I've learned a ton. Tim, as the head of sales for Faster Outcomes, obviously you're helping firms implement a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the minimum interests, they could have in your product and still call you and book a demo and to like kick the tires on this stuff?
So we have a platform. Personal injury lawyers can get involved for a couple bucks, right? $100 a month, get on the platform, start organizing their files, and they would be in a much better position than they were yesterday. And for not much more than that, we can create a really nice legal reviewed demand letter, Medcron. That's super easy. Even if someone's got a family law practice or a small employment law practice, like I said, a couple $100 a month, they can use the platform and they would be able to extract so much value from it that, not a lot of money, right? And then all the way up, I don't want to ignore our larger firm friends. We can do it with our knowledge product. There's a lot that we can do in a law firm. We can essentially create a functional law partner for a fraction of the cost. They don't take vacation. They don't sleep. They don't call in sick. You don't have to pay them out when they retire. We got you. Right through to succession planning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. We had someone named Tom Lefensky on the podcast a while back who helps law firms sort of helps lawyers sell their practices, kind of a brokerage.
Yeah.
And as you were talking earlier, I was thinking about him and how much more value like you could get out of a law firm that you were trying to sell if it was, powered up in this way.
Well, interestingly enough, we have lawyers using the platform for M&A due diligence.
Yeah.
To come up with those valuations.
It's
endless, Emery. I'm telling you, the hardest thing for a lawyer to do right now to use AI is to identify their workflows, be tied in with their workflows, and then go, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not time, it's not time effective. And once they can identify, and we help them do that through a very consultative process, help them identify those workflows that can be automated. And then it's like, this is a no-brainer. As long as to Patrick's point, there's trust, typically some type of connective tissue coming on your show, hopefully, grateful for that. So there's some trust, right? That we're going to do things that are do the right way and then make sure that everything is secure at the highest level. Mm-hmm. And Fast Route. So anybody who's interested, law firms of all shapes and sizes, please give us a ring. I appreciate the opportunity for the plug. Thank you very much, Emery. Grateful.
Yeah. Can you tell them I like to talk about this stuff? Like we will have the conversation with you. And we're a young enough company that we can have that conversation on a level that we can bring a CEO, CTO in and really examine it for you. Like that won't happen forever. We're growing very quickly, but you've got that opportunity now. Tim and I love to talk about this stuff and we're very capable at talking for a long time. And so, I would encourage them to reach out to it because just beginning this conversation is what we all need to do right now to kind of keep pace. And so have that conversation, have it at your bar associations, have it with your partners, have it with your other attorneys. Back in the day, or if you watch those TV shows, my father, I think there was a tag on there, a law firm sign that said counsel is a law. Like, let's get back to being a counselor and get away from, I have to do billing without help and without software. I have to do administrative work without help and software. I have to organize this file, whatever it is. Get back to what you're supposed to be good at, knowing the law, examining outcomes, using your knowledge and your experience and your education, and then connecting with your client and making that process better. Like, let's get back to being counselors and get away from being,
Yeah.
people who have to execute a ton of mundane, repetitive tasks, because that's not maximizing the brain that goes into the law education and goes into law to begin with.
Well said.
Awesome. Yeah, the great way to close it out. Tim, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us
Grateful.
today. If you're interested in seeing more of these episodes, you can follow us on LinkedIn or go to confidedlegal.com/financiallylegal. Thanks a lot and have a great Friday.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Fastoutcomes.com. Let's go. Have a great day, guys.
Take care.